Hello, good afternoon, and welcome everybody. My name is David Bell, and I have the pleasure of hosting this afternoon's webinar. And we are streaming globally. I know we have friends joining us from the United Kingdom and also from Latvia as well. So welcome to you all. It's a little bit later over in Latvia, 4 p.m. in the afternoon, 2 p.m. here in the UK. We have a magnificent audience signed up for this afternoon's session, well over 100 registered, but we are also streaming out onto LinkedIn, Facebook, X and YouTube. So if you're joining us from any of those platforms, good afternoon to you and welcome. As I mentioned, my name is David Bell. I'm the entrepreneur in residence for Anglia and Ruskin University, also a partner delivering the Cambridge-Latvia Venture Camp. Later on, we'll be hearing from one of the founders of that, Professor Alan Barrell, and that later on in this afternoon session. But I am joined, as you can see, with me here in the studio this afternoon, Matt Parkins. And good afternoon to you, Matt.
Good afternoon, David. Good to join you here.
Thank you for joining us now. Exciting session this afternoon, the first in a series that we will be delivering each month, talking about different subjects. And one of those hot subjects that is very conversational and seems to be cropping up a lot when I'm working with businesses of all different shapes and sizes, but also for personal conversations around the social table over a glass of wine. People are talking about AI, artificial intelligence. There's lots here we're going to explore over the course of the next hour. And Matt, you are an expert in AI, hence why I've invited you along here today. Something I'm also very keen, coming from a technology background, running businesses in tech for the last 30 years. So I know this is going to be a really great conversation and really interesting. But Matt, just for those that are joining us, just tell us a little bit more about Matt. Set the scene, Matt. Just tell us what it is that you actually do with AI.
Yeah, of course. So expert is a big daunting word. I think that AI is just such a vast topic to be involved in and a really exciting topic to be involved in. And I'll set the scene that I have got a very good understanding and how I use AI. And there are a lot of people out there that have much larger understandings than I do and deeper understandings of the inner workings of it. But I do really pride myself in trying to find out as much as possible. Now, in terms of what I do with AI, and how we leverage it within our company, I've got an agency called the AI Guys, keeping it on brand. And we essentially look at practical ways that you can leverage AI as an entrepreneur. So it's about finding workflows and whatever is already in place and creating a lot of automations, and a large percentage of these automations will have AI within them. And what we do is we create, in some cases with the automations, close to an agentive workflow. And then what we're doing is we're working with other platforms to be able to create agentive style workflows. So AI agents that can then go and trigger things and so on and so forth. And to give an example of what that might look like is, you can define what a workflow might be, and that could be something along the lines of a marketing workflow, which could be, looking at advertising and that whole process within advertising. So you've got your research, you're finding out, what your competitors are doing, you're finding out what sort of adverts work quite nicely. Then you're doing the creative, and then you're creating the copy, and then you're putting the ad out. And there are ways of creating artificial intelligence agents, right, along with a lot of automation, where you can take a big chunk of that workload out and then still keep the human in the loop, where that creative side is still needed, and they can jump in and then press the button to go, and so on and so forth. And what we're finding with that is that, people are getting more of an opportunity to do human to human interaction, and that's what's really exciting, is we're sort of taking care of a lot of that repetitive work, a lot of those things that take up a lot of time, but actually aren't as valuable to an entrepreneur, aren't as valuable to a business owner. Right. And in this circumstance, we're seeing, a really positive impact on the work that people are able to do. And we're seeing a positive impact on the bottom line for entrepreneurs and for businesses, because that profit per employee can increase because they can spend that time on the tasks that are much more valuable. So that's kind of where we are. And we have a mission. Our mission is 1 billion hours saved by 2045. So we're working towards that. And we're going to be starting to really hammer down into the companies that we work with and looking at those hours that we save and how then we can reuse that time in a really effective way.
1 billion hours. It's a big mission, a very big vision with a mission to follow. We're going to talk a lot about kind of AI and how it can be used in businesses, but of course everything we're going to talk about can also be used in everyday life as well. And we're going to touch on some of the tools that are out there, how these tools can be utilized, how they can save time and ultimately save money, i.e. reduce on resource and stuff like that as well. But for those that are joining us, you are able to interact with us, and we would encourage you and love you to interact. You can use the chat functionality, just like Elmar's has done here. Good afternoon, Elmar's. We are definitely ready to deep dive into learn more about AI. So if you put your questions into the chat, we can then answer those questions between Matt and I. We will see if we can find an answer, or maybe someone else in the audience might have a response or an answer. And if you are joining us on any of the other social platforms from Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube and X, again, you can pop your questions in there and we can launch those up on the screen and hopefully come back with an answer to those as well. Now, Matt, before we dive into the exciting stuff, there are going to be some people here today that probably have no idea what AI really is. There's going to be people here that heard it, bantered around, ChatGPT, what was Google Bard once upon a time, that's now Gemini, and then, various other terminology and analogies that have been shared with them. But in a nutshell, what is AI? Artificial intelligence. What is it in its simple format? Let's not go too technically deep here, but in its simple format, what is AI?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's an interesting question to answer, because I suppose on the perspective that you're looking at, when you look at artificial intelligence from the space prior to a lot of the tools that we had available, it was very much that kind of iRobot stuff, all of these things that you see on the movie, the very science fiction stuff of these hyper intelligent, artificial intelligent creations that can then do it and then have their own kind of consciousness and can think and so on and so forth. But if we're looking at it from the perspective of where we are today, what we're using and what most people would have used, you mentioned the ChatGPT and the Gemini and all of these other tools, what they are at the moment is something called generative AI. And again, there are some geniuses out there that would be able to explain this in a more advanced way. But in a nutshell, generative AI is trained on huge data sets, to the point where actually we're kind of exhausting the data that's publicly available. And it then uses the information that it's found to kind of create its knowledge base, its brain, and then it will put those patterns together. So it's very high level, very advanced pattern recognition, right? And essentially, in a lot of ways, it's just predictive. So it's predicting what those next words are going to be. So what those next words are that you want based on the interaction that you're having with the AI, right? And that is using all of the information it has available. Now, if you're looking at a step further than that, what they are talking about very regularly, and you probably see in the news and you hear from Elon Musk and you hear from Sam Altman and all these, these really high level people that are involved in it, we're talking about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. And that is that kind of moment in which the AI does become intelligent enough to kind of think on its own and think of new things and be creative and so on and so forth. So that's general. It's general intelligence. So that's something that they're working towards. There's lots of different conversations around when it's going to be. So whether or not you're watching the news, you don't know when you expect when it's going to come out, or when it's going to be available, or if it's perhaps already, in some way, artificial intelligence somewhere around is already there. So it's a big conversation.
Yeah, and it's a conversation we're going to explore and deep dive into a little bit further today. But I suppose one of the questions that I ask myself quite regularly, and I'm sure there'll be others listening, watching, maybe watching this on catch up at a later stage, because this is being recorded. So if you jumped in halfway through today, you'll be able to go back and see anything bits that you've missed. But how do you define AI's role in society today? And why do you think there's such a divide, a stark divide between those that view it as a threat versus a savior? At the end of the day, there's different people out there. Some are saying, look, AI, it's going to change the way we work. And absolutely it is. It's going to change the way that we become more efficient and we can do things better. It's going to save time. It's going to save money. So there's the people that really like it. But then there is a group of people that are saying, do you know what? This is the worst thing that can happen to us. This is going to be the end of the world. Hence today's title, Will Artificial Intelligence Kill Us or Save Us? Why have we got such a divide on this and a very split opinion? And I know what camp you sit within, because obviously if you're working within AI, you're going to be supportive of it. But what's your kind of feelings around this?
So again, I think that, my answer is going to be partially opinion-based as well, because without really diving in and getting statistical analysis on this, and I mean, I've looked at different reports and opinions, and I talked to a lot of people about this, but I think that there's a few different things in it, right? And in terms of people that are really concerned about it and worried about AI versus those that are really interested, engaged, and want to do something about it, there's different variables. I think you've got people that are interested, and they're interested because they're early adopters, because they love technology, because of all of that. And then you've got other people that are interested because they can see the immediate benefit of this, and then the concerns in there. And I think those that are concerned, a part of that is probably due to some of the outrageous movies we've seen, the Terminators and all the rest of it, right? So we hear artificial intelligence, we think, oh my God, Skynet, and there was even one of the tools that was going to be called LongNet, for example, and you just think, oh, it's a bit close, isn't it? And I think that's one of the reasons that there's a level of concern. But I think also with any new technology that is so widely spread so quickly, there are always people that are concerned about it. It's just one of those things, like it's a huge and significant change that's coming, and it's already here. And I say to people, and I really, really genuinely believe that AI is the biggest thing that's ever happened to humanity. And I know that there's a lot of things that have happened, but I genuinely believe that to be true, because we've seen the significant impact it's had even before we've hit AGI, right, for example. And, if you look at ChatGPT as an example, it got to 200 million users significantly faster than anything else ever released. And TikTok was, I think, second after that. I may be wrong, and that was pretty quick. But, ChatGPT was significantly faster, like the speed at which it kind of ran. And it's ridiculous. It got a lot of exposure. It even had a South Park episode about it, right? So it really has gained a huge amount of exposure. So I think that the speed at which it's changing, and the only thing that I've ever been able to really compare it against and share with people, and I've had conversations with people that were really against it, and after speaking with them and sort of understanding, because it is scary, it's such a big change that's coming, it's so significant, and it can have such a significant impact, both positive and negative, depending on how it's used. The thing to remember, that artificial intelligence is not inherently bad, but it will pick up our biases because it's still created by human beings, right? So there's one of the challenges. But the only thing I've been able to compare it against is really the information age, the internet, right? That's the only real comparison I've been able to bring out, because no one could have known what was going to happen after the internet was really, started becoming available. You and I were around before it really got big. I remember dial-up, not being able to use the phone at the same time as the internet, right? So there's all of these things. And then you look at before the internet and after the internet, right? And the adoption of it. Right. And there were a lot of people in that same boat that were like, this is scary, this isn't going to be good, etc. And then there's a lot of people that saw the future of it. And it's just that same situation. And it's exactly the same in the sense that if you don't adopt it versus if you do, you are going to be at a significant disadvantage if you don't. Right. And we are talking a huge, huge disadvantage. Like at the moment, it's a small disadvantage, because we're not quite at that really high level agent. We're not at AGI. But if we're looking at the future of what's going to be happening, if you're not leveraging these tools, one of the analogies, I think I might have seen it, heard it, I don't want to claim it to be my own because it's quite a funky one, but it's, it'd be the equivalent. Imagine going to a bodybuilding competition, a 4-year-old child versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. You've got this real divide if you don't use it, and it can be used in such a positive way. And again, the internet is not inherently good or bad. It's about how it's used. Right. And it's the same with these tools, because that's what they are for us at the moment. And then it's just about seeing what's going to happen. There's the whole nobody can know. The singularity is one of the things that gets mentioned. But in reading some of the books I've read before, it's interesting because we've had singularities before, because no one could have known what would have happened after the internet. That in itself is essentially its own singularity, and look at where we are. You've got the ability to market your business to the entire world, which means you can have much more niched businesses. The competition landscape has opened up significantly. You look prior to the internet, a lot of the small businesses that exist today would not function. People that have become incredibly successful wouldn't have been able to do so without the internet, right? So that's, where we are. Just kind of thoughts on that one.
Yeah. And if you think about that, Tim Berners-Lee, who kind of invented the internet back in, I want to say, was it 1989? If I remember rightly from my history days, that was a game changer. You're right. And a lot of businesses would not exist if the internet was not born, and really that .com bubble, that 2000 era, the birth of websites and stuff like that, and from a commercial perspective. And even businesses today are still starting based on having, online presence and e-commerce. And this is just kind of that, I talk about it as the digital revolution. This is another stage, another step in the digital revolution where, it's another opportunity for whether you embrace it or not. I think those that embrace it will benefit. New businesses will be born from it. Existing businesses will benefit from it because they will be able to do things smarter, quicker, more efficiently, make more profit potentially. I've got to be careful here because this is all if, buts and maybes, not just around using the tools that are available, but of course other things that they would do within their business as well. So I actually think it's super exciting. And as I say, it's such a conversational piece where people are worried about it taking our jobs. So let's have a chat a little bit about that. Even today, I do fear, and I've spoken to copywriters and stuff like that, and I do fear that people that may be a copywriter kind of say, well, no, AI is never going to write copy like I do. It can never do it in the same tone of voice. It's not going to be as powerful, etc. But that is one of the jobs I see it potentially taking or manipulating and being better at. Even today, I actually think the way AI can write content is super powerful. So there's a job that, today I might want some content writing for my business, but I don't need to give it to a copywriter because I just share it with AI. I give it the directive, how I want it to work and stuff like that. And hey, presto, within seconds, a minute or two, I've got something close to what my voice would sound like by obviously predefining it and warming it up, so to speak, making sure it's got the right information. That's one job. But what other jobs do you think are either at threat now or will be at threat in the short term? And I know there's loads of them, but pick a couple that you're seeing at the moment.
So I think that I would probably position it slightly differently. And I would say that rather than jobs that are at threat, because I think that, there are lots of things in this world that can threaten many different positions and roles and everything like that. And I don't see AI inherently as a threat. And I think that it's important that we all choose our perspective to understand AI and view it in a way that it's not a threat, right? So, and the reason I say that is I don't see it as a threat to these roles. I don't see it as a threat to my role. And to give you an idea, I have a web development agency, right? And there are companies out there, are AI web development tools, right? So you can quite easily go and create a website using AI, and some of them are coming out a lot better, and they're only going to get better. So the days are numbered when it comes to low cost development, and I accept that. However, I don't see it as a threat. I see it as an opportunity to learn how to use and leverage these tools in a very positive way so that you can deliver that high value, that incredibly excellent results that you would get from people, right? So you're still going to be able to deliver those, but you'll be able to deliver them at scale. You'll be able to deliver them more. You'll be able to get to more people, and more people will be able to get that level of benefit from it, right? So the other thing to remember is, as much as an AI, as an example, can do copywriting quite successfully, right? And it does, and it can write that copy, and you can get it to do your tone of voice and so on and so forth. The things to remember about that job role and designing job roles, photography job roles, advertising copy roles and things like that, the people that are in those positions are already very well positioned, right? They're already in a good place because they have such a good understanding of what it takes to produce the highest quality results and what is and is not a good quality result. And what that means is people in those positions, when leveraging AI, will get better results than you or me because we are not experts in that, right? The quality of your results is generally dependent on the quality of the questions you can ask it and how you can get that information out, right? So when you're very good at something and you see that AI is coming out, and I look at that and I go, right, this is an opportunity for me with my knowledge and my understanding and the things that I have done, right? Problem solving is one of the key things I love to do. Obviously we've got a web development agency, we build automations, and now with AI, my learning has increased by 10 times easily. I can find these things out significantly faster, and we can deliver really high level results to our clients, right? faster, which means we can service more clients at the same sort of rate that we would normally do, right? And I will get better results from an AI because of the knowledge I have in that industry, similarly with other people, right? And the other thing to remember, especially when you're looking at written content, is a really good example, is that when you are getting an AI to write that content for you, you are still going to want to put your stamp on that and make sure that, you know, you don't sort of copy paste over. And the reasons for that, right, are that everybody's writing has a fingerprint, right? All of our writing has a signature. So if you're looking at it from the perspective of search engine optimization, if you've spent years and years and years crafting lots and lots of content, there's a very distinct signature that your content has. If you then suddenly just start copy pasting content from ChatGPT or one of these other platforms, even if you've given it your tone of voice, it's still not the same. And at the moment, and I'm not saying this is going to be like this forever, but at the moment, there are tools that can detect AI generated content, and they're not perfect because actually it does sometimes.
Get it wrong. It gets it wrong.
It does get it wrong. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Wearing my hat for Anglia Ruskin University and other educational bodies will do this as well. But when you submit a piece of work, it will be scrutinized by a tool to see how much AI has been used. And there's been lots of tests where they've actually done this, i.e. someone's written out a piece without any AI help, submitted it. Another piece has been generated solely by AI, just with obviously the instructions. And it says the piece that's been done by AI is being written by a human, and the piece written by a human has been detected that it's been created by AI. So it's not perfect. Now, I suppose there's, you know, again, without going off on lots of different tangents here, there is a question around, you know, the future is going to involve AI, whether we like it or not, unless all of a sudden governments turn around and say, you cannot use it. And we are in a controlled nanny state that it's not allowed to be utilized. And if you do, it's black market type actions. So should we be teaching the use of it at school? I've got an 8-year-old daughter. I know you have a daughter as well.
Yeah, 9 years, so very close age. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're probably going, look at what AI can do. I spent the other day about 20 minutes with my daughter. We were using ChatGPT and we created a story, her best day ever. So we just gave it some things that she'd done that day. And I'll see if I can load a photo in a moment, actually. And it created the images for us and it wrote the story. And we were doing it for a bit of fun. And she loved it because now it's kind of written a bedtime story for her. And I know you do something similar. You showed me a couple of weeks ago something similar that you do. Great fun.
Yeah.
But it's also getting them to use some of these tools in a fun, personal way. But should we be, again, I suppose this is endorsing the use of AI, not trying to say you can't use it. It's a bit like a calculator. You know, it's great to understand the mathematical arithmetic here, and so you can bring it up quickly. But sometimes we need that calculator, and that's a tool that allows us to get the answers that we're searching for. Any opinion on that? Do you agree or disagree? Should we be teaching this? Should we be making them understand it better, getting them ready for the big wide world where we as business owners, we will use it in our business? It's not cheating. It's a tool to make us better.
It is, yeah, of course. And I would agree with you. Like, my daughter has got a good understanding of these tools. I'm in it day in, day out, and she has been able to use them. She's done a similar thing where we created a poem together, and then actually you can have real good fun with it with like the new voice options that are on GPT, because you can kind of ask it to do slightly funkier voices. You know, I got her poem written and I asked it to do it in a hip hop voice and stuff, and it was really quite an amusing, experience for us. And while that's a really entertaining way to use AI and a good introduction into it for our children, I would say it's important for us to have an understanding and to share the understanding and actually incorporate it into learning, because exactly as you've said, it is another tool for us to use to allow us to get results in a faster manner and in a high quality manner as well. But I think the important thing there is to have at least some level of understanding of what artificial intelligence, or at least the artificial intelligence that we're using today, is, and what the future of it might be, and also like the positive and potential negative impacts, and just being realistic about it. Because the challenge that we have is if we do not teach people about it, if we choose not to learn about it, or if we choose to say, this is scary, I'm not interested, what we're then doing is we're not learning about the changes to the landscape of not only business, but everything that's going on, because it's going to have such a significant impact. And the advancements in AI are so huge and so fast. If we don't understand what it can and cannot do, we are at an immediate disadvantage, right? And it's so important that our children understand, right, these are the things that AI can do. And I'll say that, there are ways that it can be used in a very positive way. There are ways that we can use it that are great. It's for fun, it's for laugh, it's for content, it's for the benefit of mankind. There are ways that can be done, and there are ways it can be used negatively by people that would choose to use it negatively, because it's not the AI that is inherently good or evil. If someone develops an AI to be evil, that is because it's been developed to be evil. It's not the AI, it's been developed by that person, right? And if we aren't aware of the things that can be done, in particular when you look at the video and the voice and all of those things that are very advanced now, right? If we're not aware of that, it's much easier for us to not know when information that's being given to us is accurate or not, right? And that's just one example. And if our children have an understanding of that, and we can say clearly, AI can do all of these things, please bear in mind that even if, and this is one of the things that we have to be aware of, like if we're looking at the darker side of AI as well, be aware that even if you see someone that you recognize and you hear their voice and you recognize their voice, we're in a day and age now where it might not be them.
It might not be.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand that, and if we don't have an understanding, and our children don't have an understanding of that, they are then going to go into the world at a disadvantage. Right. And I think that that's just one way. And then equally, when you look at it from the positive perspective, being good with these tools, being able to leverage these tools to create positivity is incredibly valuable for yourself and everybody that you surround yourself with, and the people that you surround yourself with, and the community that you want to build, all of those things there. So from both sides, I think it's essential that we have an understanding of these tools.
Let me just share. I managed to load it into the studio. So very quickly, I'll pop it up on the screen. Here is the pictures that AI created of my daughter. I kind of described my daughter, or we described her. And these are the 6 things that happened that day. I won't go into all the details, but you can kind of get the gist of how that works. But it has some great fun uses as well as expert uses. But you mentioned there's been a great comment coming here from Danis, which I'm going to pop up on the screen here. Any opinion about weaponizing AI and using it in military systems? Now, let's not go too much into, but one of the questions that you just or one of the answers you provided in that scenario just a minute ago was about bad people create bad things. At the moment, AI is not going to do anything bad unless it's instructed or programmed to do that. We'll worry about what that looks like in my final question before we close today. But as Danis has put here, there is use of AI now being used at military level in drones and stuff like that. And that's how it's being programmed to react and respond and deliver, unfortunately, a weapon to destroy and, maim or kill. I'm not really, I suppose I don't want to go down this route because this is meant to be a bubbly webinar and we're talking about tools, but it's a point that you just made, that it's the human that creates the instructions, that creates the output.
Yeah. So, it's a challenging one to approach, and I don't have a huge amount of knowledge in terms of how much it's being used in that arena. Because it's not my specialism, it's not something that I dive into, but I'm acutely aware that these tools are and will be very, very powerful, and that they are being used in a multitude of different ways. And there is very little that can be done, because one of the main things that funds the growth of these tools, and actually one of the main things that's funded the growth of a lot of our technology, has been military reasons, right? There's been reasons for our defense and things like that. And no matter what can be done, we're in a position where, power is a very attractive thing for a lot of people. And in order to acquire that power, military prowess is important. And while I tend not to, like the idea of these things being used in a way that is potentially negatively impactful, there's very little that can be done. And they are going to be used. And I think that, with that, it kind of reinforces the need to understand what is and is not doable with these technologies, and just keeping ourselves up to date with it. And this is why it's important that everybody have access to them, because if we're in a position where very few people have all of the access, that's where I think that, there'll be even worse situations, right? So a challenging one to approach, and it's not one of the most desirable ways that it will be used, but it's one of those situations where it will be.
It will be, yeah. Let's move away from something that's kind of very pessimistic and the use of AI being used probably, well, for the wrong reasons what we're here for talk about today. But Christina's put a great question in here.
Yes.
And I'm not expecting, it's quite a long question, but obviously one of there is basically a link. So those that are looking at this, you can obviously go off and have a look more. But do you think it will be possible to reduce the carbon footprint of generative AI intelligence? Generating 1,000 images with a powerful AI model is responsible for roughly as much carbon dioxide as driving the equivalent of 4.1 miles in an average gasoline-powered car. And the source there, I know Christina very well, and she's done her research. So we're not going to argue that the facts are here. Now, I only generated 6 images, I think it was, I showed you a second ago, which probably meant I did something like 0.1 miles in my gasoline petrol car. But again, we do hear this, don't we, is that AI is using lots of energy to run the data centers, to power the servers. Again, that's today. The likes of Apple, and I will use Apple as an example here, but I'm sure Amazon Web Services and, the others who are in play here, Microsoft, obviously, with ChatGPT, they're all looking at ways to reduce that carbon footprint, to reduce the energy power that's required to run the data centers, predominantly for the cooling, because the equipment heats up so much because it's processing and then it needs to be cooled. Lots of water is used as well in the cooling process. So it is it's not a good for the environment scenario at today, and that's a big argument and one that Christine showed. Any thoughts on this?
I love it. I love this question.
It's a great question.
I love this question. I think it's a really good one because it's important, right? And I'm big on trying to do my bit for the world, right? No one's perfect. We all have a footprint, and it's about if we all do a little bit, that's a big difference, right? So when we're talking about the impact it has today versus what we hope the impact will be, and I do love this question because I've looked at it, I've read different sort of stories about where we're headed and what's going to be happening. And actually, I would like to believe, and I do believe that there is a lot of work going into creating models that use less energy. And what I see happening and what I'm seeing happen is there are models that are coming out that have much, much fewer parameters. So when you're looking at the sort of 3 or 4 billion parameters versus the tens of billions, hundreds of billions of parameters involved, those weighted models are small enough to run on a local machine, on a mobile phone, and actually they can generate results that are good enough for the majority of queries. So what I can see happening over time is that we'll start having these language models, and the challenge with, like you say, GPT or those other ones, they're so vast, they're so big, and they're processing all of these requests that actually, let's be honest, it doesn't need to go to a language model that big, because some of these simple requests can actually be managed by a much smaller weighted model. And what we'll see exactly, Apple's a good one to mention, because what they've done is they've started doing Apple Intelligence, and they've got on-device intelligence, right? So they're trying to make it so that it runs on device prior to going to GPT. And that's the sort of direction. And Google have released some sort of lower parameter models, 3 and 4 billion. And these, again, can be run on device. So over time, I would hope, expect, and can see that we'll have, 80% maybe in an ideal world of queries that are asked to these AIs are such low thinking power needed for them that they're done on device, or they're done on machines that are local and things like that, because they don't need the large parameters. And only when it's a larger question or query, or it will give you the option. Where do you want to talk? Do you want to challenge this? This is what it can do for you. Or do you want a larger parameter model because you need to ask some of these bigger, more challenging questions? And then you're in a position where you get to do that. And then as well as that, what I love the idea of is, businesses and places like that being able to download these models and host them locally, and then have their own language models, because you've got the benefits of it being obviously less of an eco problem, and also an entirely personalized and private model that you have there as well. So really, really love that question.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question, and one we could probably explore in a lot more detail as well. But I know a lot of these global organizations, you mentioned Apple, as you say, they're bringing it in their Apple Intelligence, their version of AI, which is coming, it's out now, but it's coming in a more sustainable format going forwards. It will be done on device. But also Apple are doing a lot of carbon offsetting as well. They're huge about, doing their piece for, the global effects. And, they're not just planting trees, but so much recycling goes into their products. I'm an Apple fanboy. I've got to, declare an interest here. So, I know you're a Google fanboy, Matt, which we'll come on to in a moment. Yeah. But all these big organizations are doing what they can to offset as much as possible. And of course, let's not forget this technology, as we call it, AI has been around for many, many years in different formats. But where we are today is actually getting smarter. A lot more innovation is going into the development of the tools and stuff like that as well. So what we are seeing is things are going to get more greener, reduce carbon footprints, and going to be, better for the environment overall. But it's a great question, Christine. I love it. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to the Matt fan.
I'll say the other thing to jump in.
Sorry, go on, Matt. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I lagged there a little bit. I'm back now. I think I lagged for a second there. I was just saying the other thing to jump in with. Yep, I'm back. Yeah, I think.
You are, yeah.
Give it a second. So I was going to say that I think the other benefit that AI is going to have in terms of the eco side of things is we're going to be able to use it to solve some of these problems, because it's going to have a way of, it's going to have a level of intelligence that we don't have at some point. So we can give it these big problems and it can help us solve those problems and hopefully reduce some of that as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. We'll pick it up now. Before I go on, I was going to ask you a question about Google, but let's because it just feeds into something we've already spoken about. So thank you for your question. I'm gonna try and pronounce this Jingyu. Apologies if my pronunciation's wrong. Professor Alan Barrow, I can see him sitting in the studio, and he can pronounce that without actually. Alan, very quickly, do me a big favour. Get me out of trouble.
Django Shen, one of my favourite students from China. He's in China today, and I've invited him, and I'm so pleased he's here and asking this great question.
Brilliant, Alan. Thank you for getting me. We're going to come back to Alan in a little while, but thank you for helping me with the pronunciation there. And my apologies, Django, that I didn't pronounce it right the first time. But great question. Some students in the university start to write their essay papers, particularly with AI like ChatGPT. How do you see this situation? So we have kind of touched on this about how AI can be utilized. But just if we just go back to that question, your personal opinion, Matt, should we be using AI in this scenario, or should it be just ruled out like some educational establishments are suggesting, i.e. we don't do anything with it?
I would say it's well worth using. I think that the things to remember if you're going to use it, and the reason I think it's worth having and it's an acceptable thing is that it's a tool, like we've said, that can be used to benefit us and to benefit what we do. And there are lots of ways that you can use AI. And I disagree with using it to write your essay and just handing it in, obviously, because that's not your work. But I approve and I agree with the fact that it's very, very good at helping get creative juices flowing. If you're kind of stuck there in a bit of a rut, you can have the conversation with it. You can give it information. It can help you digest and break down complicated things as well. But the thing to remember is that it does sometimes still get it wrong. So always make sure that you're checking your facts, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I would always use, so like my personal favorite AIs is not ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT is what it is. But actually, if we look at the amount I use GPT, that's probably at about 10%. So I actually use Perplexity and Claude. They're my two favorites. I think they're excellent, and put them together, they are fantastic AIs. Perplexity is a search-based AI. And the thing that I absolutely love about that is it references where it gets the sources of information. Absolutely fantastic tool. So I use that as well. And there's another one that's incredibly interesting, especially for those university students. I'm going to have to try and remember the name of it while we're on here. But this one actually is a tool that allows you to find studies, like actual studies that have been conducted, and then you can have conversations with those pieces of information. So it's actual studies, factual based studies that have been done, and then you can find a topic, you look for that topic, you search it, go, right, these are the studies that have been done on like the eco impact of AI, right? Here are the studies, here's the research papers, and then you can engage with those research papers, it summarizes them for you. So there's so much value, because what you're being able to do is you're being able to condense your learning down like so much that you learn significantly faster. So where if it was just Google and the internet age, when that happened, the information age came out, Access to information was huge, but you still have to go in and digest that information, look at the sources of that information. Is it accurate? Is it correct? I still need to figure out the solution to these problems. Whereas with AI, when you're leveraging it with search and all of these other tools, you can give it those pieces of information. You can use that tool that looks at, actual studies, and then you can ask those questions, those tough questions that you would have potentially spent a long time trying to figure out. See what those answers look like, fact check those answers, have conversations with the people that you're learning from to make sure that that sounds about right and it's good. And then in terms of writing the essay, if it breaks the back of some of that, but you need to make it your own and you need to understand what goes in it, right? That is what's essential. And there's absolutely no problem using AI to help you do that as long as your output results are your own.
It's a research tool. I mean, we've been using the internet, for many years. And prior to that, we'd go online and using Carter CD-ROM. And prior to that, we'd go and get the encyclopedia off the bookshelf, or we'd go to the library. It's a way of research. So, for me, this is just the next level of research. It's just the next level of using Google, but it's much more interactive. And of course, I'm a ChatGPT user. I know you'll use ChatGPT, but it was going to my question. You're a Google boy, so my understanding is, are you kind of more dominant on the Google Gemini platform over ChatGPT? Do you use both? They're the two biggest ones that I think people will know. One, what's your favorite, and why? And do you use them both? And do you use them for different reasons?
Yeah. So I would argue that probably the second after GPT would be Claude, and Gemini might have slightly more exposure, but definitely in terms of performance, I would put my experiences with Claude, the results are better, more consistently, and it follows instructions more consistently. I think that because I don't use GPT as frequently, I can't speak for the exact, because I would need to compare them regularly. And there are a lot of really great tools out there. There's one called Not Diamond, which is very interesting, which actually, rather than you choosing the AI you want to speak to, you put your query in and it will give you two answers from the two AIs it thinks most suited to that question, and you can choose the one you think is best, and it will learn what you prefer over time. So to be honest, if you're looking at creative tasks, GPT is particularly good at creativity and creative tasks. If you're looking at more structured tasks, if you want a more consistently accurate result, I have found Claude to be better. I rarely use Gemini. Gemini is good because it accepts a very big context window, so you can give it very, very big documents and things like that. But what I do use Gemini for is my Google ecosystem. So we're obviously Google based. We have it, it can search for my emails now. It can find me specific documentation within my folders, which is incredibly valuable. And that has been a time save for me. So I use it for that predominantly. And then I'll use Claude and Perplexity as my two most common. And then GPT I will go to, and I think actually one of the main reasons I go to GPT is to compare the answer, or to sort of check and see where it's going on, and then to mess around with some of their new models, because O1 came out and that was quite interesting and it thinks. But obviously, because we develop these tools, I use them more through the API than I do directly on the platform.
Brilliant. The clock's ticking down. We've got about 15 minutes left on the clock to kind of wrap up. I knew this would be a conversation we could go on for a long, long time. But what I want to do is make sure that our listeners, our viewers, everyone joining us today or watching this on catch up at a later date, and welcome if you're watching this across our social channels or you're live here in the actual webinar room. I want them to go away with value. Most important thing, they can go away and start utilizing some of the stuff that we're talking about, whether it's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, whether it's Claude, or what was it? Not a diamond. Find a diamond.
Not diamond. Not diamond is it combines them all.
Combines them all. All these things are useful, but give us, and I'm not going to hold you. I'm going to say top 5, but give us your top 5 tips for AI. Ways that people here could use it. And I'm putting you on the spot because it's not a question that we've even discussed. So I'm going to give you a moment to think about, what could everybody here start using ChatGPT or other similar tools? Now, I will give an example from my perspective why you're thinking. I mentioned earlier about putting together a story. I've used it for poem writing. I'm reasonably creative, but sometimes my creative flow dries up. And it's great. I can have a conversation or I can ask it to write a poem for me. a couple of years ago when ChatGPT was, it launched in December, February the 14th, Valentine's Day, true story. And I got my wife, and she knows about this, so I'm not breaking any rules here now, but I got my wife a Valentine's card, which you've got to do, of course. If you don't, you're in trouble, along with flowers and so forth. And I was like, oh, what can I write? So I went straight to ChatGPT, okay, and I said, write me a Valentine's Day message for my wife, Joanna. Gave it an instruction, and bang, it come out with, chapter and verse. I thought, brilliant. So I noted it down, okay, but I knew she would know it's not me because it was not my style of response. Okay, this is early days of ChatGPT. And I gave it to her, and it was all lovey and gushy, and she, very appreciative. But she said, you didn't write this, did you? And she knew exactly where I'd got the information from. So it can be useful, but again, you've got to put your spin on it. It's got to be you. You've got to be authentic. But other things I'm using it for, I use it for web copy. Really good. If I'm trying to, bash out ideas and I want some web copy, I use it to get my creative juices flowing. I create like a brainstorming exercise with. I want to come up with a new idea about X, Y, and Z. Today, I knew I had 101 questions that we could share, but this document here, you can probably just see I printed it out. Okay, it's a hard copy. I just went into ChatGPT and said, I'm having a webinar with Matt, the AI genius today. I think they were the words I used, Matt. So, pat on the back there. And I said, create me 10 questions. And I just got it to generate 10 questions. In fact, we've only covered one off the list anyway. But I just thought it would give us. So that's how I'm using it. I'm using it for lots of other things as well within the business. Great reading documents. It's got a really nice reading style now. The voice is quite a relaxed voice. You can choose those. So where are you seeing value in this? And I've got more questions coming into the chat as well, which we will take.
Yeah, of course. Well, look, I'll kind of list some of the ways that I think it can be used, and probably start with what I think are good all the way to my favorite ways of using it. And I'll do my best to come up with 5. But as you mentioned, getting those creative juices flowing, if you're a little bit stuck, I have found it really, really helpful to actually help me get into flow. So when I'm on a big task and I'm having difficulties or challenges, I can use it to help me get unstuck, right? And this is linked into one of the ones a bit further down the line. But, that's probably one of the really good ways. I think having fun with it is good. So you can have a good laugh with it. The new functionality that it has, it can be a really good laugh. So I think to lift mood and things like that, as silly as it sounds, it can be really, really good. And to help create those kinds of pieces of content as well. And then if we're looking at practical uses and getting real value out of it, if you've got those repetitive tasks that you have to complete again and again, if you have it with, if you've got Gemini built into your Google Workspace, there's easier ways of doing this. But generally speaking, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, GPT, they all have their own variation of a custom kind of built model, right? So what I would say is really worth doing is considering the tasks that you are doing repeatedly, and then potentially creating yourself either a GPT or a gem or a project, depending on which one you go for. And you give it those set of custom instructions.
Let me just jump in there. For those that are not sure, what do you mean by creating a GPT or a gem? Just so people get the idea, because there's a reason for doing this, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah. So, and I mean, if you do go onto my LinkedIn, I do have some short tutorials on. I think Gemini's on there, and I think Claude might be on there as well. GPT, there's a much more advanced one on there on how you can actually get it to send webhooks, which is really, really cool. And a webhook is just basically sending information to a specific location and then triggering something, right? So really, really cool. But what I mean by that is within the platforms, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, there are custom AIs you can build. Geminis are called gems. Perplexity is projects. I think I'm trying to remember what Perplexity's one's called, but I can't remember. And then GPT is obviously GPTs, right? And then when you go into those platforms, you can create a custom one of those. And what that means is you create your own version of GPT, the AI, or whichever one you go for, that does and performs a specific task. So you might then use it to help you generate or sort emails or documentation or review that. You could basically give it a template, and Claude is my preferred one for this. You could give it a PDF and say, this is our template for, content strategy, something like that. And then you basically say to it, I'm going to come to you with a keyword. And when I give you that keyword, you need to write me out this document. And then all you then ever need to do is go to it with that keyword, and it will perform those instructions that you've given it to do. And it saves that repeated kind of training every single time. You've got that custom model there for you. And then the other thing I would say, if we're sort of moving on the list, I think it might be on 3 or 4 now. But one of the other things I say to people as well, and actually I've seen this quite a lot, is a lot of people will use GPT or one of these models, and they will have the same chat open for a very long period of time, and they'll just ask it multiples of different questions, completely irrelevant from the previous question that they might have asked. So they might go in and say, I need you to help me create a business plan. Here's your business plan. Great. I now need recipes on a fantastic, stew or whatever it is, right? And those things are so completely different that if you start building out a long chat, it's not going to be good at any one particular thing. So what you want to use is a chat per task that you have. So if you don't create a custom GPT or whatever else it is, you can essentially go in and say, this is going to be my chat that helps me with my marketing, and that's all it does. This is going to be my chat that helps me with my business plan, and that's kind of all it does, because it specializes in that particular thing. And the more information you give on it, the better it's going to get. But the other thing to remember, and this is the same with Claude and all of the others, is that the longer that conversation, right, the bigger that context window. So when you're looking at something like Claude, you will use up your allowance, if you like, of messages much more quickly if you use huge chats. So that's why projects are so valuable, because you can give it that training and go back to it fresh each time. It keeps that context window smaller, right? And as well, the larger the context window, the larger the piece of content that you give it. One of the really interesting things about AI is that it's quite similar to humans, right? In the way that it learns and retains information. It's actually really interesting. And what it's often very good at is remembering the start and the end. And we're similar to that, right? So what you look at in human psychology is, if you're going away on holiday, if you have a terrible time on your way back, a lot of the time you're going to remember that holiday as a bit of a rubbish holiday, when actually you could have had a really great time in the middle, right? We're very good at remembering the start and the end, but what's in the middle is something that gets like less attention or less memory power, if you like. And it's the same with AI. So if you've got really, really big amounts of content in it, then the middle is more likely to get sort of disregarded or forgotten, unless you create something that is very, very good at remembering those particular points, right? So that's generally speaking. So I'd say those are probably the top ones. And then I would say for me, and it's not going to be the same for everybody, because creating content, great with AI, helping with workflows, great with AI, and even like having your own personal assistant, which we have, and we actually have on WhatsApp as well, which I absolutely love. But my favorite thing about AI is that I have been able to accelerate my learning with AI so much faster, and the research that I do so much faster. So I love to learn. I love to try new things. I love to experiment with all of these tools. It's why I'm on the forefront of this and why I'm really, really enjoying it. And being able to use AI when I'm stuck means that where something might have taken me sometimes up to multiple hours to solve a problem, I can quite literally go to an AI, say, I'm stuck with this. Here's a picture of what I'm stuck with. Can you help me solve this problem? And almost always it helps me come up with a solution for that problem. And it has significantly sped up my workflows, my learning, and all of those things. So that is my personal favorite way to use AI.
Yeah. Matt, I put into the chat for those that are here, and I will pop it up onto the screen as well. If you want to follow Matt on LinkedIn, linkedin.com, then just search for the architect. You will find Matt, and you can follow him. And you're pumping out stuff on a regular basis. I won't say daily, because that's putting the commitment in place, but regularly, each week minimum, you're putting great tools out there, things for people to look at. So really worth following Matt on there. That link is in the chat, so you can click straight on that and follow Matt as well. There's still some questions to go, which I'm conscious we're going to get in before we finish today. One last tool I'd like to add, because I use it a lot, and it actually didn't really devise from an AI tool, but I use Otter a lot, otter.io. It's a really, really great tool. I use it for, virtual meetings. Even in the room, I will use my laptop or my mobile device, and it will record that meeting. So it's like having my personal PA there taking my notes. I use it for all sorts of stuff. You can upload videos to it afterwards, or you can record it live as it happens. what it does, it transcribes that meeting and turns it into some fantastic transcribed notes for you. Then you can share those with others that were in the meeting. But more importantly, now with the enhancement of AI, it will actually summarize that meeting and give you all the action points and who's responsible for those action points. So you don't have to sit there and even, it actually takes better notes than I can take when I'm interacting in a meeting, and I can rely on it. And even if it doesn't get it quite right, I can go back into the recording and then listen to that voice note and match it up, and it calls it everything matches. Great tool. Highly recommend it. Otter is great. There is another one called Fireflies, and there's others out there as well. But it's such a useful tool. And for those that are watching from a university point of view, get it, pop it on your phone, take it into a lecture with you, record the lecture, let it transcribe it, let it create a summary of that meeting and key things that you need to consider. So if you happen to fall asleep in your lecture, if you happen to miss something in your lecture, you've got everything in front of you can go back to. A great tool.
And the other thing as well, I'll jump in on you, David, because the other thing that I love about those tools is it creates conversational AI from that meeting. So I've got a similar one that I bought a lifetime license for, and then I'll get a chat window that I can engage with that's powered by GPT-4o Mini, whatever one I want. And I can ask questions about the conversation that was had. So if there's a specific piece of information, I'm like, I can't quite remember what they said about that. I can say what was said about X, Y, Z, and then it will find that within the conversation. So again, really, really powerful tools.
Yeah. Right. 5 minutes left on the clock. 3 questions to cover off. This one is pretty easy. Some universities in China have just established a system to instruct students how to use AI in their studies, i.e. what's allowed, what's not allowed. So there we go. There is that kind of, this is how you can utilize it. This is what you should do and shouldn't do. It's not really a question. It's a kind of a statement, but I see many other educational establishments and probably many other organizations probably doing something similar. You can see in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same around the rest of the world, but in probably sort of our employers' handbooks, there's going to be an element of saying how you can use and trust and utilize AI. If there's not a policy for that, I imagine it's going to be on its way very soon. I'm going to pick on this question. So Utkarsh Gupta. Now, Utkarsh, let's just put this into, I know Utkarsh was talking to him last week. Let's just put in front of this, he's Dr. Utkarsh. It's very important. You should have told us that, told everyone that, Utkarsh, but I'm doing it on your behalf. And you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of skill in this particular question that's been added, because Utkarsh spends a lot of time all around research over in the US at the moment. So I don't know what time it is there for you, Utkarsh, probably early morning time, 9 o'clock, something like that. And this is very interesting. This is an increasing concern of cognitive decline because of the use of AI in development age. So UNICEF researchers back this up. Do you guys think our existing educational systems are ready to implement the right balance between the inevitability of AI implementation and creativity of human intelligence? Is there a case that, a couple of questions in the answer here. Is this a case of us thinking less, using our own creative brain, relying on the tools? What's your opinion on that? I'll keep the question there. There's probably a few different answers that are going to come from this, but can you summarize it in a minute and a half? Because we've got one more question to cover.
90 seconds I've got to come. Right, okay. Well, first and foremost, I'll very quickly say that I love this question, and it's a real interest of mine, because it's similar to a lot of other technologies that have come out. Because when these new technologies that take away the need for brain power to solve a problem come out, there is that concern of, our cognitive ability will be reduced because we don't need to engage our brain as much because of those situations. And I've seen this, and I agree that to some extent that can happen. And you're bang on the money in saying, are the schools ready? Are we ready to help people understand how to use AI but still keep our cognitive ability quite high? And the honest answer to that is I don't know if the schools are ready for that. I'm not involved in that industry, and I think that they should 100% be preparing for that. And actually, one of the things that I like to do, and that's why I'm on this conversation, David, that's why one of the reasons you and I get on so well, is I love to give back, and I love to share this with people, as many people as possible. As I say, I teach my daughter I'm always happy to share this knowledge with people, because I think that if we do use it in the right way, as I've just said, my favorite way to use it is to learn. And I have been able to challenge the AI and come up with answers to questions much more quickly because of that. And I feel that my cognitive ability has improved because of that. And I think that schools need to be ready for that. And that is one way to do it. It's like, use these tools to help you and engage with you in ways that keep you creative, that keep your cognitive behavior engaged, right? And it's in order to do that, we all need to have a good understanding of what these tools can do, right? And it's a case of the more awareness that we have, the more I can jump on these conversations, the more I can engage even with my daughter's school and explain to them the benefits of it, but how to use it in a positive way. We're more likely to keep that cognitive ability. I think the calculator example is a really good one, because, you know, when that came out, we didn't need to use the create the calculations so much. So there's always that, and there's so many of these technologies, because it's not just that, it's the distractions, it's the social media, it's all of these platforms that have had that contribution towards the reduce of the cognitive ability.
Yeah, it's everything in moderation. You know, this is for me, this is what it should be. You know, there's a reason, there's a time, there's a place, there's a need. Use it. Other times, don't use it when you can think about it. You know, it could be used to evidence, it can be used to back up, it can use to research. You know, you might have something you've got to do in front of you. Well, you do it yourself, and then you might use AI just to, you know, ratify what you've done is correct, or can it do it better? I just think this is all about balance. And what I don't want is our governments telling us how we should be balancing that, you know. But unfortunately, we say it's common sense, but we know common sense is not common sense. It's very lax. Utkarsh responded, yes, it's 9 o'clock in the morning there. I thought it was, Utkarsh. Great. And great you joined us, and thank you very much. Final question I'm going to pick up here. That was another one from Christina. What regulations do you think we should put in place in society to ensure that AI will not be used in the bad ways? It's a big question with an answer that we're not going to be able to answer in the time that we've got allotted. Can you summarize?
I suppose there should be things in place that help avoid the use of AI in negative ways, and, you know, that they'll put those in place. And I can be really brutally honest in these situations, is that if someone's going to do something bad with AI, whether or not there are regulations in place, they're still going to do it in the most part. Those that then decide not to do it because of the regulations, well, they were never really going to do anything particularly bad in the first place. So it's one of those, it's just one of those situations where, with or without regulations, it's going to be used in a way that is not positive. And the best thing we can do is educate ourselves on what can and cannot be done, and protect ourselves from things that might be potentially negative. Right, and that is what I would say is the best defense against something like that.
Yeah. By the way, it's 11 p.m. in China. We are officially global streaming this evening. This evening in China, and this morning in the US, and late afternoon or mid-afternoon in the UK here. Brilliant. Thank you for all those questions, Matt. We have reached an hour of conversation. This was structured for an hour to find out a little bit more about AI. I knew we could do with another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I think what will happen, Matt, this is a story that is yet to be finished. There's lots of stuff to go on. One final question for you. In your own words, the future of AI. Can you summarize in your own words the future of AI? Where do we see AI in the next 20 years? You know, let's go for something a little bit, you know, and we're going to write this down, and in 20 years' time, we're going to go back and say, Matt said this, and it either was wrong, or it'll be exactly like The Simpsons. Everything you say and predict happened. So go on, tell us the best and the worst.
David, I'm sorry to disappoint you here, right? But I cannot tell you I can't even fathom what it's going to be like in 20 years. Even without AI, I wouldn't be able to fathom what it was. Because if I look back 20 years from when I was, you know, sort of the 13-year-old boy versus where I am now, you almost can't predict the sort of technology changes. So if we incorporate AI, 20 years is a long, long way. So I can't even fathom the changes that there are going to be. But I can tell you what I think there might be in the short and maybe long term. And that is that we are going to be moving towards a very agentive based AI world, right? And what that means is you can create agents that then can manage other AIs and then go and achieve tasks. And when we hit that point, you need to be involved in it. I would strongly suggest everybody here look at what an agentive AI is, start to get an understanding of agents, because that's going to be a really, really powerful space to be in. And that's where the real difference between how we're using AI now and how we're going to use it in the near future is going to make such a big difference versus those that use it and those that don't. So agentive based is some of the things that we're going to do. But in terms of, it's so difficult to know. What I would strongly suggest as well, because there's going to be ups and downs throughout it. I think there's going to be challenges and everything like that. But another thing I would suggest is following a chap called Mo Gawdat. People probably potentially know who he is already, but he's ex-Google X, and he's very much AI. He's written a really, really good book called Scary Smart, and in it he goes into what his ideas of it, because he is an incredibly intelligent human being. He's got incredible views and thoughts on what AI is going to be. But I do agree with him that we're going to be heading towards a world where we do have artificial and general intelligence. In so many ways, we're almost, could it be considered that we're creating consciousness? That's another conversation in itself. And we are going to be creating these AIs that are going to have emotions. And Mo Gawdat himself believes that they're going to have more emotions than we do, right? So it's a super interesting conversation. And I think that that's kind of some of the futures of what's going to be. And once they reach that level of intelligence, there's almost no telling what can be achieved, right? It's super interesting.
Yeah. So I've asked AI, what does AI look like in 20 years? I'm not going to read through it all. I'm just going to summarize the 10 bullet points. Integrated AI in daily life, hyper-personalization, autonomous systems, revolutionized healthcare, AI-driven scientific discoveries, economic and workplace transformation, ethical and social challenges, super intelligent systems, collaborative AI ecosystems, and augmented humans. That's what AI says it's going to be like in 20 years from now. Matt, it's been a pleasure having you here with me this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to pop you backstage because I want to bring Alan on just to summarize this afternoon session. Matt, thank you very much once again. Have a great day. Absolute respect for your time here joining us in this day's session. And we will get you back for a future discussion as well.
Appreciate that. Cheers, David. It's been a pleasure being on. Thank you for having me, and thank you for a great conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. See you soon. Now, let me please welcome Professor Alan Barrell. Alan, you've been sitting patiently backstage listening to the conversations that we've been having. Alan, give us kind of your summarization.
Yeah, well, let me first of all say, David and Matt, thank you so much. I mean, it's been an amazing discussion. It's covered so much ground. You've done a wonderful job. You've inspired, I'm sure, all those listening around the world. And we got people here from all over the place, Latvia, UK, China, Vietnam. I don't know where else they're from, but it has been a wonderful event. And I thought that I'll say a little bit in a moment about why we are here with these webinars and why we want to do more of them and how they all came to pass, or how this one came to pass. And we hope it's going to be one of many, many that will go on for a long time. But I just wanted to add one or two comments of my own about AI and how it's helped me. Very practically, you've asked some highly intelligent questions, and the ethics and morals are issues that we have to work out as human beings. We have to make sure as far as we can that it gets used for good things and not bad things. But just to tell you a couple of examples that you came up with questions about what should be, what shouldn't be, how should students use it. David and I participated not long ago in a 4-day training program for 50 16-year-old Chinese students who were visiting. And we got a request, can you do a 4-day program for these 16-year-old Chinese students on leadership? And we were working with a Chinese friend, Clark Liu. He may be online today. And he went to ChatGPT and he said, give me a 4-day program for leadership with the kinds of students we've got. And it came up brilliantly. And I found that David and others could help me with it, and we delivered it, and it was wonderful. And at the end of that program, the students presented brilliantly what they had learned in presentations. And the other thing, this issue that my dear friend Zhang Zhou asked from China about using it for studies and things like that. Well, I feel one thing it can help a lot with foreign students with language. You know, it can help you make sure that your English is grammatically as good as it can be. And it can help you enormously search for research papers. It can look at so many research papers so quickly and find the ones you want that it saves you immense amounts of time. So that to me is a very important thing. And one particular project that's going on here in Cambridge that relates to a lot of what we've heard this afternoon, and I can send you information, those of you that are listening, if you want it. It's called the Digital Education Futures Initiative, DEFI. It's run at Hughes Hall College, and it's looking into all these aspects of how digital education, of which AI is part, of course, can really be properly used and be very, very helpful. So I've learned an enormous amount. I thought the questions were great, all the questions, and I thought Matt and David did a wonderful job. So give them a big hand wherever you are. They won't hear you, but I'm clapping them now. It was wonderful. Now, you can see it up in the top right-hand corner of your screen, LatCamp, VentureCamp. And for those of you that are not aware, some of us, for the last 9 years, next year will be the 10th, have been working in Latvia to begin with, finding entrepreneurs who are really enthusiastic and seeing what can be done to help them develop their entrepreneurial capability and their companies. And we work with them in Latvia and with universities, University of Latvia, Riga Technical University, the Stockholm School of Economics in Riga, and business people there. And we find wonderful entrepreneurs in Latvia, which hasn't always had the best support for entrepreneurial activity. And then what we do every year, we bring those that really qualify and really show us that they're really serious to Cambridge for a 1-week intensive program, the Venture Camp, the Cambridge-Latvia Venture Camp. And quite a number of them have started companies and they raise money. And we can send those of you that don't know about these programs more information if you'd like to have it. But what came about this last year, really, we couldn't fit in all we wanted to. And we certainly couldn't fit in AI in the way you've seen it this afternoon. And we thought, well, why should we just have a once-a-year event? Why can't we found the Venture Club? So we now are in the process of founding. This is the first real online event of it, the Cambridge-Latvia Venture Club. But we'd like it to become the Cambridge International Latvia Venture Club. It doesn't have to be limited to Latvia. And we might find we can bring students from entrepreneurs from other countries than Latvia to our venture camp here. I've just made a proposal to an organization in Sri Lanka to do some student education and entrepreneur education here. So we're volunteers. We're crazy people who really feel the world will be a better place if more entrepreneurs can succeed, because entrepreneurs change the world. We're quite supported by those universities I've mentioned, and also by Anglia Ruskin. They give us rooms that we can use here. Some of their staff help us with the teaching. But the idea of the webinars has come into being, and here we've got the first one. And I'm really grateful to David, because you see how good he is at making these things happen in a real sense. And he's got his studio and everything is streamed and it's all very professional. So thank you for that, David. It's wonderful. Okay. And we now have the plan to do a webinar every month. And we don't just want to here's the list of things we're going to do. I'm going to give you a list of subjects that we've got in mind, but we want to hear from you. And we've got a little bit of time. We can hear something from you today about the subjects that you really would find helpful. We would like to deal with things that don't get properly dealt with in the curricula of universities, or things that really interest you, where you feel you need more help. But we've got a whole list of things. We've got a list of dates. January, February, March, we're up to June, I think. Well, I won't read them all out, but we can tell you what the dates are. And we've got an event planned in principle for January, when we're going to deal with another subject that we couldn't quite handle this year on the venture camp, sustainable finance and ESG. We've got a wonderful young man, Connor, who's going to come and talk about that with David. And the format will be similar to this. We will sometimes show you a few more pictures, but we really think that the format is best if it's conversational and it involves you all and you can all participate in it. So it will be like that. I've got a list of other subjects that we might do here. I'd like to do a session next year on Show Me the Money. How to raise money for your business is another thing. The E factor, entrepreneurship, what is it really? You know, we don't talk enough about what it really is. Social media marketing, building a winning team, going international, management distributor businesses, leadership, case studies in effective communication, and building the business model. Those are just some of the things that we have in mind. And I think David and I are absolutely agreed that every time we will have someone on the screen there who really is doing it or has done it. It will be case study related. It will be reality related. It will not be book related or business school related. It's going to be about real people. So that's why we're all so excited. And I've been looking forward to this first session, and it's actually certainly exceeded my expectations in the wonderful way that it's run. And the fact that we've had these great questions from you, which have really, really enlivened the whole thing. Now, it has been recorded, and I'm not sure, David, quite how we will follow it up. I've made some notes, but I guess we'll also come forth with something of a list of access reference points and things we've covered. For those that are here today, I'm very happy to help produce some sort of follow-up document.
Yeah. So for all those that registered, joining us in the webinar viewer today, you will automatically get an email following this webinar with a copy of the recording. For those that are joining us on any of the social channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube and X, you can go back there. They will stay live on those platforms as well. So you can always go there and look at the recording. So the recordings are there. And of course, if you go on something like YouTube or you download the video, you can actually ask AI to transcribe it and give you, kind of the breakdown of what's happened. It will summarize it for you. So use AI to as a benefit. But going forward, Alan, we've got our next one on Wednesday, the 22nd of January. And that's at 2 p.m. And then we've got them running pretty much every towards the end of each month on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. We're doing it at 2 p.m. in the UK. That's 4 p.m. in Latvia. And of course, that's going to vary depending on where you are around the world. But we thought the afternoon was probably the best time to make it accessible to the majority. But all sessions will be recorded and accessible into the future as well. And I look forward. This is great. With Matt here today, our first one, kicking us off in the series. And I think that, some of the conversations we're going to have next year is going to be super exciting. But as you said, Alan, we want our audience to tell us what they want. If there's a particular subject, then let us know and we will do our best. Well, I'm sure, Alan, between our connections, not just you and I, but the connections that we have, we can find someone to cover any subject that someone throws at us. We're not the experts at it, but we will find the expert.
Yeah, and I think, please, all of you listening, this is your program. We're not doing this for us. We're doing it for all of us. We know from the work we do, there are many gaps in the kind of support some of you get. It's very frustrating for you at times. You're not really getting access to the information that you need or the people that you need. And these are not just presentations and interviews and lectures, because they will lead you to build your networks. Build your networks. They'll introduce you to new people. If you follow up from today, you will gather quite a lot of very, very interesting people who can help you with the future. So we want this to be to you to feel that this is yours. This is your program, wherever you are. Latvia, we love you. I was recently, just a week ago, at the Latvian embassy to celebrate the birth of the state of Latvia in 1918. I had a wonderful time, and the Latvian embassy is very, very supportive of us. But, we can incorporate any nationality into the program here, but we need you. We will only be satisfied and we will only be rewarded if it becomes an activity with which you feel really, really excited and from which you gain knowledge and help and forward movement with your careers. So we need you. Anyone want to say anything today? Put it on the screen now, David. I mean, maybe we'll get, if you've got a subject you want us to think about, that's Django, my dear friend. I met him last year. Is Echo with you, Django, tonight? Is Echo there?
There's
Echo
about a 15-second delay, Alan, so we might wait 15 seconds for them to come back.
He'll tell us if Echo's there. I met Django and Echo, and a program that I spoke on. They were from the Beijing, from a university there, and they got to know me. We have regular discussions. They've got big ambitions. They're doing all sorts of things, and you know, it's wonderful to have these connections around the world. We can help each other, and we really want to keep it open for everybody.
Yeah. And there's loads of great, you know, I'm just putting some up on the screen. We're not going to respond to all of them, but yeah, lots of thank yous coming in from various people. And thank you very much for joining us. For some of you, it's now late into the evening. For others, your day has just begun. But whether you are starting your day or finishing your day, we bid you farewell. We bid you good night, good morning, good afternoon. Please come back and join us next month. Have yourself, for those that will be celebrating during the festive season, have yourself a great Christmas, a very happy New Year. And we look forward, Alan, I, and our future guests, welcoming you to join us for more fun, more conversation, more interaction. And everybody, as Alan said, is welcome. There is no cost ever. There's nearly no charge for this ever. It's free to everybody to come, participate, learn, and share and collaborate. So thank you to everybody. Alan, they're my final words. I'll let you say goodbye and wrap the show up for today.
Well, all I will say is not only join us for future sessions, tell your friends. Let's make this a very big international activity where we all share information, and let's see what we can do to build bridges between nations and cultures and make the world a better place, as well as proceeding with whatever we want to do. I'll say one final word. Entrepreneurship, to me, is not just about starting a business and making money. Entrepreneurial thinking is a way of life. It is important to all of us, whether we're researchers like Akash or whether we are starting businesses, whatever we are doing. Entrepreneurial thinking is very, very important. And one of our future speakers, Dr. David Gibson, just written a book called The E Factor, and he's going to tell us when he meets with us all about entrepreneurship in life, not just in business. So let's believe together and work together to ensure that entrepreneurs continue to change the world. And if you have anything at all to say, how you can think we can make this better, tell us that too, please. So thank you for being with us. It's been a wonderful event, the first of many. We've set a high standard here, so help us maintain it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you from me. Thank you from Matt as well for joining us. Have yourself a great evening, a fantastic morning, a great day. Bye-bye from me and bye-bye from Alan, and we'll see you again very soon.
Bye. Bye-bye.